So, Lakshmi, I'm making you live. I will let you know once we are live.
Sure. Yeah.
Lakshmi, you are live now. You can start.
Great. Thank you so much, Sapna. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you are joining in. Hope all of you are keeping safe and having a great Saturday. So those of who have joined, I know from across the world and from the region, thank you so much for joining in today. This is a great opportunity, and I consider this as a privilege to present in this session today with all of you. I'm so excited to be partnering with Women in Cybersecurity Middle East virtual conference and the community, which is very focused on bringing in more women into the cybersecurity space. Thank you, Women in Security Middle East, for this opportunity. All right, so quick introduction about myself. I'm Lakshmi Nair. I work as a senior managing consultant and route to market leader for IBM Security. And I've been in the in the industry for over 18 years, primarily in the information security and cybersecurity space. In my current role, I work with a lot of customers in this region, with the Middle East Africa region, to support them in their cybersecurity requirements and bring them the right services that are needed for their security journey. So the topic that I'm talking today is cloud security leaping beyond the native tools. Is something which is, I would say this topic came to me based on my experience, the way with a lot of customers and people who have been moving to cloud, embarked on their cloud journey, and help. I had an opportunity to support them in helping them, to identify their security issues and bringing together the security framework for them. So this is something that we have learned over the time, and from our support that we have provided to multiple customers. So this came naturally as a topic to me when I thought, okay, what should I talk about in the cloud security space? Because we have been talking about a lot of generic topic, but this thing I thought is a practical problem many organizations are facing today. All right. So what I'm going to cover today, we'll talk briefly about the journey to the cloud, and why organizations still find this to be a challenging thing, rather something which they would still consider as a reservation when even today in the digitization era. Some of the key challenges and why we think they are right in terms of thinking, the journey is inevitable, but yet should have certain set of precautions, certain set of controls in place when they move. And we'll briefly talk about what controls are available and what would be the set of tools that we can use to augment the current cybersecurity tools that are available in the native tools framework that you have today. And we're talking about a structured way of approaching this problem, how we can bring in, it's not just tool exercise, but primarily based on the threats and risks that you are facing in this space. Yeah. So okay. So cloud journey, moving to cloud is the normal today. It's no more the new normal. So organizations are considering this at multiple facets, right? Be it saving a lot of capital expenses, elasticity, scalability, better resource utilization, and also in today's scenario, you have an option to look at how we better utilize the resources to provide remote working possibilities to our to the employees and accessibility to the customers or clients across the world. So it's the normal, right? And at the same time, what we also see is when we move to the cloud, we still see a lot of reservations for organizations. That's primarily from a security perspective, right? So we used to be in an era where you had a traditional data center where you have rooms and also dedicated rooms. You have racks, a lot of racks there, and maybe one or more number of data centers. And we know who is accessing that data center, where the data is stored, and how many servers I do have, how many storage devices I do have. So it was pretty simple, straightforward to know where the data is, who access the data, which countries, which regions the data is stored, who can make changes to the data. But today, when we are looking at cloud, as exactly this diagram indicates, we don't know where is the data stored, right? And are the hosts and containers which are processing my data, the VMs processing my data, are they really secure? The whole concept of security of the cloud and in the cloud, are they really being taken seriously, right? Who is making changes to the systems? What are the regulatory requirements they are bound by? We can talk about, say, SOC reports that will help you reasonable assurance that, yeah, you have the security controls, but yet you have a problem of how do we meet these cloud security requirements, right? And primarily, it's there's a saying that what you can't see is something that we always be suspicious about. It is it really there in terms of the security and compliance requirements, and it's not really the organization's worry is not really something without any reasons, because today if you look at the kind of attacks that we see in the last couple of months, at least last 18 months, we would see at least 8 out of 10 organizations have faced cybersecurity incidents in cloud, right? And they also feel that more than half of them had breaches that they experienced in the, just because of the cloud misconfigurations. So imagine a situation wherein you have cloud, you have incidents and you don't really know how to address them, right? And to add to that, see, 99% of the cloud security failures were because of the customers. So what does it mean? We have security of the cloud, which is your primary cloud service provider. CSP is what I'm going to use in across the session. CSPs offer in terms of their infrastructure, their platform, whichever service that you're opting for, right? So the security of the cloud is your CSP's responsibility, whereas security in the cloud, what's happening inside the cloud is the end customers and the client's responsibility. So it's like you have you have a society, a housing society, housing community, where you have security guards who will secure things or the perimeter. But what is inside the house is something your responsibility. You need to lock your doors. You need to keep your valuables in the safe. You cannot keep the house open when you go out. So that's absolutely your responsibility, right? So that is what it indicates. Primarily, the security incidents are because of the security issues in the cloud. Now, coming to the records, and also it also resulted, around 990 million records were exposed to cloud misconfigurations, primarily because of not properly configured servers, publicly accessible backups, rsync backups, or open network access storages, or containers not being secured. All of this could be the reasons for the cloud misconfiguration that we see here. And to add to that, it is more in the recent past, 2019 and 2020. Yeah. So let's look at a bit deeper into what are the specific issues that we see in the cloud migration space. So when an organization decides to move to cloud from a traditional data center to a cloud space, we decide, okay, 40% of my data workloads are moving to the cloud, right? So at that point in time, we have no visibility, or we do know that, okay, this is what is being moved to the cloud. But how do you have a view of what is stored in the cloud versus what we have outside the cloud, and have a centralized view of what's happening to the data, who is accessing that data, how the data is being transferred, and even when there is new data being introduced, you have new data sets being introduced. How are we handling that data which is in the cloud? And what many organizations see is that when you decide, okay, I'm moving to cloud, many of the CSPs, they have a good number of native tools, right? So for example, let's take an example of key management. So all the platforms like AWS, Azure, Google, all of them have their key management platforms, right? Azure Key Vault, or maybe for Secrets Manager, AWS, and then similar platforms which are available. And then you already have a key management system outside of that as an organization. And when you are moving to the cloud, you don't really know how do you sync up both these. How do you know which keys are expiring, and how do you make a better use of or effective use of both these key management systems, right? So that is one example of a challenge. Let's look at identity management. Typically, organizations go for AD-based authentication or LDAP-based authentication. And when you move to the cloud, there is a whole list of cloud identities to be managed. So how do you look at, how do you manage the identities outside the cloud and in the cloud? So how do you integrate a common process, common approval mechanism to manage these IDs? It could be privileged IDs. What is the process that you follow across the ecosystem? It cannot be like, for cloud, I have a different approval process. I have a different validation cycle, and I have a different validation cycle for the IDs that are handled at on-prem, right? So how do you really look at those aspects? Now, let's make it a bit complex. You have regulatory and compliance requirements. So one of the entity has a HIPAA requirement, and another one has a PCI requirement, and yet another has, say, the California privacy compliance requirement, GDPR, to add to that. So and you have multiple workloads, something in the cloud, something outside the cloud. So today, when I look at as an auditor or a compliance specialist, how do I see a comprehensive view of the compliance posture, or the required artifacts, and the compliance posture of all the applicable regulations today, right? If there is a variation, how do we alert all the concerned parties? Some of them may be in the cloud, some of them may be outside the cloud. So how do we look at that aspect, right? So that could be, that is another challenge that we see. Now, how do we rapidly detect and respond to threats? So imagine, and as I said, right, many of this cloud, all cloud platforms have their own native tools, which are pretty strong and comprehensive, I must say that. And And there have been studies which states that in the future, the typical traditional managed security service providers could be replaced by cloud service providers, because they do have everything that a cloud security ecosystem needs. So let's take an example of SIEM, Security Incident Event Management System. So you have an off-site Splunk that was monitoring the security events of all that workloads are being in the cloud, outside the cloud, and you have an Azure Sentinel that's there in the Azure platform. So I'm talking more on Azure. It's not just because Azure is more superior. As I said, I'm not going to recommend which tool is better, which tool is not. I'm just taking an example, which maybe by nature I'm more, I'm more hands-on on Azure. So that gives me an example that comes very naturally to me. Okay. So Azure Sentinel, we are looking for monitoring. Yeah. So in that space, how do you see that? Okay, in the traditional system, how do you detect threats, right? So you have a failed logon attempts from 41 of your critical applications, and that could be an alert that triggers your SAEM, and then you see, okay, what's happening, right? So you would also look at the corresponding firewall logs and see, is it an internal threat or it's from outside? So how you can correlate that. Now imagine you have an application that's in the cloud and a similar equally critical applications in the cloud and outside the cloud. So both of them have failed user login attempts. So how do you correlate? And it could be a DDoS, right? It could be a distributed denial of service attacks. How do you bring in this intelligence together and then see, hey, I think there is an issue both in your workload in the cloud and on-prem, and we need to pick it up. I have a problem to resolve at your cloud firewall, and something that I need to look at my on-prem firewalls. I need to plan a change, a rule change for my firewall configuration, right? So this is absent when you are having two different monitoring systems. The whole purpose of having a security event monitoring system is to have a comprehensive platform to look at how we are viewing each of these incidents and threats, and then take a coordinated effort. Yeah. So some examples. So we will talk about corresponding thing in terms of incidents. How do we handle incidents in different scenarios? So I'm making a bit more complex now. So we spoke about one cloud, one on-prem, or one cloud, multiple data centers. So let's look at multiple clouds. You have multiple clouds, some part in Google, some part in Azure, some part in Azure, some part in AWS, or maybe two clouds. Let's not complicate it. So you have two clouds and multiple data centers. So how do we look at, how do I track the whole ownership of data in the cloud? Where is it relying? And how do I have a comprehensive view of what's happening in each of these clouds versus what's happening in the on-prem, and have all of them together give a CISO a picture. These are the top 10 threat vectors that we need to look at. These are the top 10 risks that I need to prioritize, because we see that there are these issues across platforms, right? And also imagine a situation where you face a security incident. So how do you respond to those security incidents? So you have playbooks. So each of these native platforms, they have their own security incident management. They have their own playbooks, especially in the Azure. They have good playbooks that they offer. And then how do you respond to an incident? And one of the major scale of cyber resiliency is that when there is an incident, how do we bring back everything back together? How fast you can bring back them together to normal business. So it's very, very important for you to know the process to follow, whom to contact, what is the playbook, what is the incident response process for each type of incidents, who should be called, who should be involved to bring everything back to normal, right? Because business has to go on. So although many of these cloud service providers, they have their own incident response processes, if they are not integrated with the organization's process, then it won't be of no use, right? So end of it, you are not able to bring everything together, and you are not able to put together a comprehensive incident response mechanism for this. Yeah. So these are certain major issues that you face in not just in the single cloud space, especially in today's space, the organizations are going for a hybrid and multi-cloud strategy. And that's where we have to be absolutely careful about how do we pick up the right controls and the right tools to protect the organization's assets and the workloads that are moving to cloud and outside the cloud. So this diagram that I thought I'll bring into just to see how this whole problem look like, or the landscape looking like. And I have another one that I'll talk about the different tools at different spaces, right? So we also need to consider that the multi-cloud hybrid cloud scenario, the organizations are responsible for security in the cloud. So which could be data security, it could be host vulnerability, it could be network traffic, it could be user activities, it could be resource configuration. Any of this could be the responsibilities of organization for security in the cloud. So which means security in the cloud also mean how do you correlate that with the data that is that matters to the overall organization. Yeah. So let's look at a typical system, right? So what could be the different elements that's adding to this complexity? We spoke about different different elements. So this diagram will give a snapshot of where exactly are some of those problem areas, or the areas where we need to look at an integrated solution, right? So look at this one is about managed IBM cloud. You have AWS, you have Azure, IBM cloud. A lot of this is happening, and you have a huge set of containers. You have Docker, Kubernetes, you have all of this is being handled by our own, for multiple purposes, right? So, and as I said, one of the things that I mentioned about identity and access management, how do we handle the identity and access management in the cloud and outside? And to encompass all of this, you have service management systems. So you have the typical ITSM, IT service desk tools, maybe Remedy or ServiceNow, similar tools that will handle the whole management of the assets in the cloud and outside the cloud. So how do we integrate all of them together to the multi-cloud scenario? How do we have a visibility of what all service requests, all changes that needs to be done? And also, when you are making a change for the things in the cloud, how do you do that analysis of what matters to the systems outside the cloud, right? So the risk assessment for that matter. And inventory and asset management is the biggest problem, not just in a very, in an organization where you would see you just have, a few assets, right? So it's about continuously discovering, improving, and tracking the assets within the organization, which means it could be at multiple places, and having the right risk classification for that assets so that we manage them with the right set of controls that are required. So in the next few slides, what I'm going to talk about is about a certain set of tools that would help to bring in this orchestration and correlation together. So these tools are at multiple levels, multiple planes for multiple purposes. Doesn't mean that these are mandatory for every organization. And then subsequently, what we'll also talk about, what could be your decision point to pick up which one is best for your organization. Yeah. So when we move to the cloud, and see different set of native tools there, over a period of time, the industry has identified, yes, there is a gap that needs to be filled. It's not that you move everything to cloud and you just forget about it. You have a larger problem to take care of that, and you need some supporting tools to um, you know identify these issues. Yeah. So today, we will talk about a couple of different tools, which is the CASB, CSPM, CWP. Yeah, so these are the major supporting tools that are available and being in fact used to bring in more comprehensive security posture to the cloud workloads. Right. So let's start with CASB. CASB is Cloud Access Security Brokers. So imagine how firewalls are to a data center. CASB serves the same purpose to cloud. So it identify the right data, data being moved, transferred between cloud and outside the cloud. It does data discovery to some extent and also serves as a DLP, data leakage prevention tool purpose, and most importantly, adaptive access control. Depending upon, once we have a view of what type of data is moving to the cloud, you have a provision to set up rules for these systems. And many of these CASBs will offer you a provision to do an adaptive access control to determine what kind of access to be given, what kind of rights to be given, depending upon the type of data. And also, to some extent, it can track the user behavior as well. And it also manages your encryption and tokenization process because it knows it is the control wherein you know that there is a what type of data is being handled. It has a capability to orchestrate. It's not a let's be clear that it is not an encryption or tokenization tool. It has an option to apply the policies, its associated policies to these the data that requires encryption or tokenization. So some of the examples in this space are McAfee, Symantec, Netscope. Then you have Microsoft Proofpoint, etc. So CASB used to be, I think CASB is the first set of tools that came into the cloud market for this kind of supporting tools. It came back in 2011, and it's now a pretty crowded space in the CASB product area. So the important thing here is you need to choose the CASB provider to see which one works best for you, what is the kind of data that you are handling, and what are the use cases that are important to you. So that's about CASB. So let's move a little bit into the platform space. Now we have whole set of workloads residing in the cloud, in multiple clouds, right? So we spoke about an example about compliance assess management, right? So you have a PCI compliant application being hosted in cloud A, and another one on cloud B, and one on the on-prem system, right? So maybe XYZ reasons we can't have everything in one cloud, right? So how do you monitor non-compliance to this? Or maybe you have another one with a GDPR requirement. So how do you monitor any non-compliance to this as a compliance professional and then enforce policies? Okay, this one doesn't seem having the encryption in place, or maybe this one doesn't have the network segmentation that was required in place. So how do you enforce those policies, define and enforce those policies for in a comprehensive manner? And let's also look at, say, DevOps space. You have an entire security requirements being integrated to your CI/CD pipeline. How do you make sure for each sprint you have the right set of requirements, security requirements being pushed to the DevOps, the CI/CD, so that they work on the implementation, and then subsequently on your compliance reviews and your vulnerability assessments related to these applications that are being developed. Yeah. So CSPM, rather, cloud security posture management, is a tool that works on the control plane, which is primarily on the PaaS configuration space, which assess the security compliance and automate remediation and define policies, enforce those policies, and also notifies the respective owners, action owners, and the asset owners of um, any specific non-compliance for that matter, right? So it has compliance management, it has an asset inventory, it has the threat detection and response, and so on and so forth. So some of these tools are Prisma Cloud, KBionix, Savient, some examples in this space, right? Yeah. So let's look at the CASB, where it's primarily on a data primarily on access space. CSPM takes care of the PaaS space. And let's now come to CWPP, which is Cloud Workload Protection Platform. So any cloud platform, right? So you see a lot of very granular workload creation in terms of microservices, or maybe containers that or even at a network level, right? You have network segmentation that happens on on the virtual network segmentation activities that happens to very, I would say, containerized security administration of different elements that are moved into the cloud, right? So how do we track each one of them in the cloud? So let's give an example. Let's take an example of containers. So you have a container in which one of your critical application is getting deployed. How do you track the hardening standards are met for the containers, or if someone is trying to alter the container settings, which may impact your application performance, or maybe the security posture? How do you track that, right? So also, from a WAF, web application firewall set, right? So which how do you look at the logs that are coming into? So each one of them really require a very focused workload review, which should be integrated with your on-prem platforms as well. So as I said, it could be network, it could be even endpoint, as I said, or it could be some of this malware attacks that came in, and you need a comprehensive tool to monitor that and alert people. And at the VM level, what would be the different configuration configuration settings to be monitored and enforced. And cloud workload protection tools exactly does that. So there are and many tools, right? This mix of CSPM and CWPP, you will see many tools doing both. Some examples, and there is a very large level of overlap between the functions of both these tools, which is fine, right? You don't really need multiple tools in this space. So some of the examples are High Trust, Illumio, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Trap. So some, one is at High Trust is primarily at your VM level, Illumio at network level, CrowdStrike is at endpoint level, and Palo Alto, similarly, which is probably a container level, right? So some examples of the tools, not that one is superior or, as I said, they look at, each of them function at different levels. Now we have whole set of new tools, new type of tools. And how do you pick up? How do you identify which one is best for you? Yeah. So let's look at, and it's very important that you leverage what is coming along with the cloud, because they are quite powerful tools, and leverage what you already have in the system. Well, yeah, look at those tools. And what is the differential aspect? So let's look at the security consideration. Compliance needs, regulatory needs, we spoke about them. Yeah. So you have threat management. How are there tools that can manage, monitor the threats comprehensively for loads coming from the cloud and inside the cloud? Can my existing Splunk or QRadar take up logs from the cloud and give me an alert outside the cloud? And in fact, there are possibilities for things like Azure Sentinel, or maybe AWS GuardDuty. All of them could be integrated to many of these powerful SIEM tools like Splunk or ArcSight or QRadar, and give you a comprehensive view of the threat vectors and threat intelligence and proactive threat hunting capabilities as well. So we don't really need a separate tool. It's just that an integration is required. We don't need a separate tool for that. Incident response. How do you look at the incident response processes? So integration possibilities of different tools in the cloud, and some of the platforms like Demisto or Resilient, those are possible. You don't really need a separate CWPP or CSPM or CASP tool for that. Data security, very, very important consideration. And many times you really don't have a control. How are you tracking the compliance for your certificate management and encryption, and how these keys are managed across multiple clouds? You really need a tool that can encompass everything together. And the data discovery and classification is another challenge that one needs to consider when we are looking at these controls. So bringing all of this together, so we saw different tools, we saw different requirements, different issues. How do you approach this on a more systematic way? The answer is like anything, any other thing, risk assessment. Risk assessment in multiple flavors we have seen happening. So risk assessment again, this time, let's have a combination of NIST 800 that will bring you the right set of threat vectors and threat sources and likelihood of occurrence, so that you can have a comprehensive list of threats that could be applicable to your organization. Because when you move to cloud or when you move to multi-cloud, your threat landscape expands considerably, right? So this will help you to assess the threat landscape. So once you do that, you have a very comprehensive cloud control applicability matrix. So what is cloud control applicability matrix? That will give you this set of requirements from a cloud perspective that organizations should look at. Now, for each one of these cloud requirements, look at based on the assets that you have. You have the threat vectors, the threat landscape pretty visible in front of you, and then do the mapping of what are your requirements, regulatory requirements, or your threat intelligence requirement, data security requirements, cloud control applicability, CCA, that will be able to give the right comprehensive view of that. Once we do that, do a mapping. Yeah, so I have the required controls, or rather applicable controls, and my threat vectors are mapped to that, and do a mapping of what do you have in the on-prem environment. As I said in the previous example, do I have an SIEM that can take care of the things, or do I have a change management process that could be extended to the cloud space, or my incident management process, can I make certain changes and have a playbook updated, which is more comprehensive to take care of things in the cloud and outside the cloud as well. I can bring all these playbooks together to respond to uh, incident in a more comprehensive and faster manner, right? So you don't need tools for that, right? So you need process modifications. You need most importantly, how do you bring in the right set of policies there, right? So with all that, what you can do is to identify, do you really require a tool, or is it okay, right? So that mapping is possible once you have a clear view of what uh, workloads or what assets that you have, what are the requirements, where is the gap, and is it really a tool that can help, or it is a set of processes that, plain simple mapping of process technology, people process technology. It's just that we need to look at a combined view as an organization. It's not just okay. It's not a cloud security risk assessment per se. So it is something that you need to look at both from an organization perspective and from outside, the cloud perspective as well. Yeah. So I have given a sample checklist which you can refer at leisure on what is it based on. So this is something that we have done. We have used and brought in some in good results, because it doesn't it's not a mere process-based assessment, because it needs, definitely it requires knowledge about tools. It requires knowledge about different processes. How do we augment all of this? So, but more of a structured approach that we can bring in. To summarize, um, it's more of a pragmatic approach and a framework to select what is right. It's not about choosing a lot of tools. You may have, and in today, many CISOs are facing the issue that you have lot of tools, hundreds of tools, and then they don't find the right value coming out of those tools. Yeah. So today, when we look at the tooling, you and the budgets that you have, you need to invest in intelligently what matters to your organization, what will protect the data and data for your organization. So that gives you a very, very important takeaway from the system. Leverage native tools set to the best of your capacity. They're very, very powerful tools, and they should be able to bring you value for money that you are spending. Now, choose augmenting tools very, very carefully, depending upon what is your threat vectors, what are your, bring in the right use cases, identify the right use cases to choose the rest of the tools. You need to look at the threats, compliance needs, data residency requirements. Based on all that, identify the use cases that are applicable to you. Then what sensitivity to the development processes, what development is happening, security requirements for the development processes, and also focus more on the VMs and the container builds, so that you can bring in the right set of controls that will impact your more on the configuration, the threat management, user behaviors, and the potential vulnerabilities that can come up. So, it's about carefully, or most importantly, understanding what matters to you as an organization from a threat landscape perspective, and then mapping what is available versus what is needed in the space. Yeah. So with that, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. I hope all of you are at least a few bits of knowledge taking back home. Um, I'm happy to answer any questions, and happy to take up, happy to support any other questions that you may have. Thank you again for listening to me today. Over to you, Sapna. Do we see any questions?
First of all, thanks a lot, Lakshmi, for very impressive presentation. So we do not have time left for Q&A, but I believe our audience will reach out to you on your social media accounts on Slack as well. as we posted about your talk already, and our attendees are already enjoying your session. So thanks once again for very insightful talk.
Thank you so much, Sapna. As Sapna said, be free to reach out to me over Slack or any of the LinkedIn or Twitter. I have added that in my in the presentation as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much, and have a great day ahead.